Hey, what's going on everyone? This is YoeYoursTruly back with another video, and today we're gonna be going over the build guide for all the offlaners and Predecessor. So I actually got some cool inspiration from doing this, from the videos that Soul Reaper and Crashy put out for mid lane and jungle respectively. I thought it'd be a really cool trend to kind of get content creators to put out these kind of build guides for the different roles and whatnot. So we're just gonna be using omega.city. It's gonna just be a really kind of cool website, have a very nice interface for doing all this stuff. But without further ado, let's kind of jump straight into it. So we're gonna be starting off with Countess. So how I like to build Countess is I like to go the Magician quest and going into Soul Bearer. The reason is because Countess is one of those heroes in the offlane where she's sort of kind of like mana hungry, and so I know like going like Tempest Opulus is pretty good. You can do a kind of certain penetration like stacking build with her with kind of Opulus especially, but I personally like going Magician quest because I like that consistent mana sustain, because if you have no mana and Countess offlane, you really can't do anything at all. So you need to make sure you can use your abilities as much as you can and stay out of lane as much as you can, because you need your abilities to trade with your opponents, but also to kind of clear ways on that stuff. So I go Magician quest, and I like Soul Build because of the movement speed and the additional lifesteal you can get from, which is a very good defensive utility kind of item on Countess. So first item I will actually build. There's two options you can do. Sometimes I like to do Alchemy Wall, just kind of stack even more mana. This additional mana would feed into Soul Bearer, but also you just get really good kind of additional magical power overall. So this is very nice if you want to do kind of a scaling kind of build. But I've been sort of leaning towards more like a Mega Custom Rush first item, because Mega Custom is that kind of item on counts you need to power spike your damage and become a much bigger threat in lane against your opponent. Like if you're against like a Grux, a Crunch, or a Feng Mao, those kind of heroes, once you get Mega Custom, you can become a much bigger threat against them. So the sooner you can get this item, the better. So I've been leaning towards like a Mega Custom just first item. Second item, I always really like waist leggings personally, because it's a very good, just all-around great item on Countess. You get movement speed when you damage a build, when you damage heroes. You also get a very nice passive where you do more damage against low HP targets, which Countess definitely really excel at. Next item I personally really like to go is Lifebinder. So like these two items are going to give you more than plain enough damage to kind of be a big kind of threat in the game. So my last three items when I do Countess offlane, I like to go still try to build magical power, but also trying to build a little bit more survivability, because Countess is one of those heroes that kind of plays a lot along the lines of a lifesteal, where you can be deceptively tanky if you can keep like lifestealing up and gain huge chunks of health every time you damage opponents with abilities and whatnot. So I love Lifebinder for this. So you get more magical lifesteal and you get some kind of nice kind of scaling passes with it. After this, I like to go World Breaker next. Again, more magical power. You get additional magical power per HP. So Lifebinder, the HP you get from that feeds into the World Breaker passive, and tenacity is also pretty nice. So you can sort of kind of queue back faster if you get CC with the increased tenacity. These two items are just very kind of good combo in general. I just kind of love it because they both feed into each other, because they both have scaling passives with HP. So with your last item, it can be sort of a kind of flex item at that point. You can go something like Oblivion Crown to cap off your build, just kind of get that massive magical power stick. You can go Corsica if you want to have a little bit more penetration for the tanks. If you have been running into a bunch of heroes with a bunch of lifesteal, you can go Tank Scepter. I don't consider this to be as needed, because usually with Countess damage, your main targets are the squishies, and no amount of lifesteal can save them if you can just put them the 100 seal. So this is more like a situational item right here. And also, Golden Skip is also going to be nice, kind of like, again, a good magical stat stick, but you gain some physical armor if you feel threatened by like a bunch of physical heroes in this game. You can even do something interesting and go like Wayman, just kind of adds a really, just if you want to be much kind of tankier in these fights while still a considerable threat, because once again, all this HP is going to feed into World Breaker and Lifebinder and whatnot. But yeah, that's kind of like the build paths that I would recommend on Countess. Moving on, we're going to be doing Crunch next. And so let me kind of get this set up. So Crunch, so Quench is gonna be one of those heroes that are gonna have a little bit more build variation, because Countess is an assassin. You build magical assassin items, mage items, and then you just kind of pop off. Whereas Quench, you kind of build based on your opponent and based on who you just facing overall on the enemy team comp. So I personally I would either go, let me get this up. I either go like a Titan's Quest if I'm facing against like, let's say, a range offlane, or it really depends on your preference, because both Titan's Quest and Warrior's Quest is gonna be great. I love Ice Golem Talons personally, but I feel like if I need to be a beefier kind of Quench in this team, let's say I have a Chimera jungle and we have a deck of support, and I feel like I have to be more like a utility frontliner, that's when I do a Titan's Quest. If not, I just kind of go Warrior's Quest. But after that, your first item is always gonna be Mutually First. That's just kind of like a Quench staple item, just kind of gives you all the stats you want: Army, Family, Ability, Haste, and the passive that works really, really great on Quench. Your second item as well is going to be dependent on who you're facing in the offlane. What I like to do with my second item when I'm playing like a bruiser, like a Quench or Grux, is I build second item to counter my offlaner. So let's say my offlaner is someone that does a ton of magical power, so like a Countess or a Shinbi, then I'll build something with the magical armor. So like I'll go either like a Leviathan second or go like a Forehelm second. These are just very great counter items to these magical offlaners. You can maybe even do something Unbroken Will second if you are facing like a Steel or whatnot, but Unbroken Will I sort of kind of fallen off with kind of changes they did with it. I personally think Tane Bastion or like Forehelm are much better like tankier options against like the magical any kind of magical damage in general. So let me just bring this back up. So if you're facing like a physical offlaner on the other hand, then you're gonna be being physical armor against the offlane. So let's say you're facing a Grux offlane, then you want to build Tainted Guard, because Tainted Guard is the best physical defense item against physical heals with lifesteal. So Tainted Guard you're gonna build against Grux, you're gonna build against Quench, just any like physical offlaners with a lot of like good lifesteal. You want to just build a second. If not, if you get like a Feng Mao offlane, then I go Stonewall to really shut down his damage and whatnot. So after you kind of pick your second counter item, your third item is going to be another counter item to either just the same offlaner again, or let's say the jungler or mid laner is starting to get really fed, then I'll make it a counter item to them, because your mid laner is just going to provide all the base damage you need, plus along with Quench's kit to be a threat. So instead of like kind of going full kind of bruiser Quench, because Quench is one of those heroes that sort of fall off in the mid to late game team fight. That's why I like to build him on the tankier side, because you're always gonna be a threat in team fights. It's just a matter of, are you gonna be beefy enough to draw like enemy aggro long enough or not. So I like to build him on tankier so he can really kind of tank for his team really well. So third item, use the same items I show you for physical or magical like heroes. I'll just do the same thing with the third. So let's say the Gideon and the Countess jungle are very scary. You just go like a Leviathan or like Forehelm there. Fourth item, that's when I build my other core item for damage. So I usually for like Quench, I like to have at least 2 core damage items, and then the rest are kind of like tank items. So at this point, you're very tanking. You want to make sure you can still build more physical power, so you can kind of keep up and making sure you're still a damage threat. So that's when I'll go either Salvation, is a very great damage item, but also really great shield you get that scales on bonus HP you build. Just kind of great survivability item. Or I go where is it? Draconium's another great option too. I personally really like augmentation. That's kind if you're really ahead, you could build augmentation third. So it just really depends on how the team is going, but these are kind of like your 4 core items, maybe later augmentation there somewhere, and 2 tank items. And last item is just another like depending on how the situation is going. So at this point, you just build more physical armor or magical armor, or even just do like go finish up with salvation and whatnot. Alright, next up, we're gonna be talking about Feng Mao offlane. So what I like to do with Feng Mao offlane for quests is I like to either go Warrior's Quest or Titan's Quest. And the reason why I don't go Assassin's Quest on Feng Mao is because the thing with offlane is a lot of it comes down to survivability and sustain both HP and mana wise. And so going Assassin's Quest offlane, it sort of doesn't feel the greatest a lot of the time from my personal experience, just because you look at the how much HP Assassin's Quest gives you back versus like a Warriors or Titans quest. It doesn't give you that much HP regen and lane. So you have a lot more damage with like kind of like a Assassin's Quest, but you have a lot less sustain. Because Feng Mao offlane, you're gonna be doing a lot of trading with your passive and your E and your Q and all that. So I like to kind of go a Warriors quest or Titans quest to make sure I can be a lot more healthier in those trades, because Feng Mao is still assassin, he still has lower kind of defensive stats and whatnot. So if I go a Warriors quest, then usually I go Phoenix. It's just a great dive tool, so you can go hyper dive a carry and whatnot. You get the kill, they kill you, but you pop this, so you get the revive, gain some time for yourself, and keep fighting after that. It's just a very great tool for actually enabling assassins. So if it's not Phoenix, I'm going Titan's Quest. I go Titan's Quest again against range offlaners, but also kind of depending on the enemy team comp. Let's say they have a Kira, and we know Kira likes to press R and just kill everyone around her. Razorback is a kind of cool tech counter against her, because you dive on her, you spec in the altar, you pop Razorback, you reflect all that damage against her and get damage reduction, so you can live long enough to finish off a Kira and an ultimate. Or let's say you're going against a Gideon, or let's say you're going against a Grux who likes to go all in on you, you can bait them in with a Razorback. So Razorback is sort of more of a situational counter item against who's you facing the offlane or who you're facing across the enemy team. But most of the time you're going to be going Phoenix just because you get some of that physical power, so you're a bit more deadlier earlier on. So your first item on Feng Mao, what I like to do with Feng Mao offlane is I like to build Mind Racer, because we looked at the T2 component actually. You actually build Soul Chalice first, because that's where you can kind of start to stack your mana, because Feng Mao is one of those offlanes that's very mana hungry, because his abilities cost a lot, and the way how often you use all your abilities is pretty frequent. So you want to be building Soul Chalice so you can have a lot better mana sustain and lane. And plus it's just a really great scaling item to where you get to like you fully stack this out, and Mind Waste is a huge kind of physical power stat stick. So what you would do is you would build Soul Chalice, and your first core item most of the time is going to be Pain Reaper. Pain Reaper is just a kind of really excellent tool. You get the physical penetration, build to haste, and the kind of stats you really want in Feng Mao. The passive works really incredibly well, because the movement speed and the increasing physical penetration works really great for Feng Mao being elusive. You can chase down targets a lot more easier and whatnot. So Pain Reaper is actually a great all-around item in my opinion. So once you finish out Pain Weaver, then what I would do is you go actually finish out where is it? You finish out Mind Racer. That's kind of like the most efficient path when you do that. You get a huge power spike once you hit these 3 items. So your third and fourth fit items are gonna be kind of your standard assassin items on Feng Mao. So something like a Omen third is very, very solid on Feng Mao. Infernum is another really solid item on Feng Mao. And then your last item can be like kind of situational, depending on if you're facing a team with a bunch of lifesteal or whatnot. So something like Dread can be great if you're diving into the enemy team a lot and you're facing against a lot of magical damage threat. Something like Tainted Blades really solid against a lot of lifesteal like Knowledge, Rampage, all that those kind of annoying heroes. And something like another last item I can recommend is Absolution. It's actually a great item on Feng Mao, funny enough, because it gives you a great stats all around, and whenever you get CC, you get like the damage mitigation and whatnot. So Feng Mao, you kind of dive, you get CC, but then you get like passive to help you enable to chase people still and not get busted down too hard. So a lot of great options to kind of fill this last slot and whatnot. So this is kind of like the kind of standard Feng Mao offline build I would go. Alright, next up is Mr. Gruxy Boy himself. So I always love to go Warrior's Quest with him offlane, and the reason is because with kind of how small range Grux's kit is, you need Ice Golem Talons to have that movement speed to be able to engage on people or escape people kind of thing. Because Grux is one of those players that once you get caught out, you're caught out really hard, right? Whereas Ice Golem Talons could help you escape certain situations and whatnot, as long as you have good map awareness and you see people incoming and whatnot. So your first item on Grux is almost always gonna be Bonesaw. That's Bonesaw is just kind of his core item that you almost go. It just enable his ultimate D-best, give you a ton of HP and whatnot. So kind of great all around first item. The only other time you swap out Bonesaw for Grux offlane is if you want to go Basilisk to counter like a Sevarog or even like a Riktor or Steel, because Basilisk is gonna shred armor but also do bonus damage based on like HP and whatnot. So it really depends on who your opponent is. Almost all the time you're gonna go Bonesaw, but if against like the tanks, then I'll go like a Basilisk first kind of thing. So similar to Crunch, your second, third item are sort of like you're building to counter the enemy offlane or just the enemy team in general. Because I like to build Grux on the tankier side, like even more so than Crunch, because Grux is someone that's very like susceptible to getting busted down. He's someone that's very committed on team fights. He needs to stay alive as long as he can so he can get max bleed up and get much fire as his army fam from like hitting targets and whatnot. So I really like to build Grux, especially on the tankier side. So the second item is, once again, it's going to be an item to counter your offlaner. So against like a Shinbi, against like a Countess, against like a Sevarog, I'll do like something like a Tame Bash in second or like a Foy Helm. And let's say your third item can be another counter item to the same offlane. So let's say like a Foy Helm. So this is your way of really kind of shutting down that one magical offlaner. And of course, if you get a physical offlaner, Tainted Guard for like a Grux or Crunch, and or like a Stone Wall for like a Feng Mao or like Kallari or any kind of assassin. So let's say we kind of balance it out. We build some physical armor right here. We did some magical armor, that item. So for the fifth item, similarly to how I build Crunch, you want to build another physical core item, and so that one is a little bit more dependent on what you're kind of facing. Grux have a little bit more flexibility in that. So what I like to do is generally Draconum is really solid on Grux. He gains physical power as he attack opponents, but also increased healing defeating into his army vamp and stuff. So Draconum is a really solid item for that. You can go Salvation if you want to be even more tanky but still building some of that physical power. You can go like Basilisk. So let's say the other tanks are coming online, like in the jungle or support, you can build this to kind of counter them. It's really up to what's going on in the game. Last item is once again just kind of a flex item, so generally you can do stuff like a Salvation to kind of run out your build. If the ADC is super fed out of their minds, then that's where you just build another physical armor item, so like Tainted Guard or like a what is it? Or like a Warden's Face as a sample. Alright, next up is Kallari. So Kallari is sort of interesting. She's classified as an offlaner, but she's a lot more pick dependent on what the enemy team is picking and what your team is picking. Because you're purely an assassin. If you have a Chimera jungle and like a Decker support, then picking Kallari offlane would make it really tricky for your team because you essentially have no frontliners at that point. Or rather like certain matchups can really shut down the Kallari, like Countess offlane can shut it down. A Crunch can do really good. A Sevarog can do really good. It just Kallari just sort of like one of those interesting picks to do offlane that can be fun. It just you need to not only be really skillful with her, but really realize that a lot of times you're gonna be playing at a disadvantage, at least early on. So first item on her is the quest we're going to be going is like kind of the Assassin's Quest, so that's almost always going to be next. Next is just an item that really enables Kallari to burst down people left and right. So unlike a Feng Mao that he's technically assassin but with big warriors and Titan's Quest because he's a lot more in their face and whatnot, so you get build a little bit more sustained. Kallari is someone you want to not really take a lot of trades, at least melee trades. What you want to do with Kallari offlane is either kind of farm from afar with your dagger, or what you try to do is after a certain point, your trading pattern is just gonna be you going invisible, and as if you are like the Kallari jungle, you just gank your own lane and get really quick trades and back off. You don't want to take a large trade. You only want to take trades with your abilities essentially. So that's why we kind of can go Assassin's Quest in the offline with Kallari. So your first item on Kallari is going to be where is it at? It's that one item that I think you know. Malady. Malady is just a great item overall for assassins. So like Feng Mao offlane, he's not at doesn't need Malady necessarily, just because there's a little bit different items you can go that can be a bit better for like a Feng Mao offlane versus like a Feng Mao jungle. But for Kallari offlane, you still go like Malady. This is gonna be your best way to help clear your way, push them out, but also kind of stacking bonus damage as you kind of hit low HP targets. Just a great core item always on Kallari. So after Malady, then you do it. So this is where you can sort of like pick different items depending on who your opponent is. If you're against any magical offlaner, then I'll be like build Dread second because it's a great assassin item, but also you get some magical armor out of it. So it's not it can be a great item where you can still spiking your damage. Like an assassin, you're not really building to counter build your opponent. You're picking to enable yourself to do as much damage as possible as an assassin. So you can. But for Dread, it's a great assassin item, but it can also be great against magical offlaners. So you can kind of build it second. If not, if you're facing just kind of like a physical offlaner, then a Phonom is kind of great, another second damage item, just kind of power spike in general. Third item is you can just be like an Omen, just very great on Kallari. And then another great item, that's where you can do Dread. Dread is usually built later in the build for Kallari, but against like magical offense, you can build earlier for the magical armor. And so last item can kind of be just kind of reflex, or kind of like Tainted Blade gets a lot healing opponents. You can build. I'm trying to see. You can build like Nightfall. Like if you're someone that's purely split pushing only, then Nightfall can be a great kind of last flex item. Pain Reapers, it's actually really solid on Kallari as well. So essentially, you can think of this as your core build for like Kallari, and the last two items you kind of switch it up depending on who you're facing. So like against tanks, you go Deathstalker and whatnot. So the last two items really depends on who you're facing, but they're just pretty much just assassin items, just kind of standard Kallari stuff, recommended items to really just enable her to do like Kallari things and kind of burst down squishies and whatnot. Next up, we have Riktor offlane. So Riktor offlane, you're almost always gonna go Titan's Quest because you need that for the sustain. But also Riktor loves the HP because it's passive, his E. They get additional benefits based on your maximum HP. So you go Titan's Quest to just kind of build that HP out. Also, Sapphire's Mantle is actually great on Riktor because this allows you to, once you park this active, you slow people, so it makes Riktor able to stick onto people much easier, so it can force fights out much easier with when you want to fight your offlaner, for example. So your first item on Riktor is sort of, so this is an interesting thing, is your first item on like a tank in general is to counter your offlaner. So let's say you're against a Grux or a Crunch, you just build straight up like Tainted Guard to completely shut down the damage, because Riktor is someone that has a kit that has great wave pushing power. So you don't need Brimstone necessarily like a Steel does early on. You can go purely like first item, kind of the tank item. Then you can do like Fire Blossom as a second item. So first item is either going to be a physical armor item or magical armor item to counter your opponent. So let's say we're against a like a Sevarog offlane, we go Tainted Bastion, just that as an example. So your second item, I always like to go Fire Blossom, because yes, Riktor does have decent clear in this kit, but Riktor is someone that wants to kind of rotate a lot for objective fights, especially as you go into the mid game. So you want to make sure you get able to clear your way pretty fast, or even make sure that if your opponent's like a Shinbi who push out the wave really fast, you want to go an item to help kind of match that wave pushing power. So Fire Blossom is your best kind of bet for doing that. Just a great kind of tank item also in general. So third item is gonna be another tank item on Riktor, so you can build another magical armor item to counter the offlaner or just anyone that's a big threat in the game. So let's just say the Grux Jungle is a big threat, so we'll go Tank Guard third. Fourth item, this is where you can either go another tank item, like Riktor just built purely as a tank because he can be a big menace in team fights if you put a bunch of tank items on top of him. But if you want to still have a bit more offensive capabilities, because Riktor is someone that technically is a bit more deadlier than like a Steel or Sevarog just because of Riktor's case very offensive orientated. So going something like World Breaker is actually really great on Riktor. All that HP you're building builds into bonus magical power in World Breaker, so it kind of really rounds out your build well. You're very tanky boy, but now you're doing good damage with Fire Blossom and additional damage you get from the World Breaker. And last item is just gonna be just a tank counter item, so just any like the magical or physical armor depending on who you're kind of facing. Dynamo is really solid in here, so it's kind of like this. You can finish off with this for example. Next up is gonna be Sevarog, and he's actually gonna be built very similar. Like Riktor, Sevarog, and Steel are the three kind of tank offlanes, and they're gonna be built very similarly to each other because they just kind of fulfill that same role. So much like Riktor, you're gonna go Titan's Quest, so most of the time you're gonna go Razorback to kind of really be a very tanky threat. You can consider these robots as well. Let's say if you want to kind of dive key targets really well, you can go new robots, get the move speed, and kind of chase down people much easier. Most of the time you're gonna go Razorback though. And first item is gonna be just a pure tank item because Sevarog is the best off-laner tank to go like the pure tank route because of how Sevarog can work. He get increasing magical power on his side farm with just how many stacks he farms out. So Sevarog is someone that you build for tank, but your damage will scale as the games go on. So you can go the full tank route much very good on Sevarog. So much like Riktor, you just build like the first item to counter your opponent. So like Tainter Guard against like a Crunch or a Grux, or like a Tainted Bastion against like a Countess, the Shinbi, or like a Steel. So second item, again, it's gonna be another counter tank item. So it can be just another physical or magical item. So yeah, so offline is really about just count picking a lot. So I'm giving you guys good example builds, but you gotta realize the build order and offline just really depends on who you're facing and whatnot. So let's say we're just trying to build as much magical power armor as we can against the pesky Shinbi offline. Then we do something like a Foil Helm second as an example. Where's that? Here we go. Or even like Crystalline Kosi too as well. So third item, this is where you can either go World Breaker or a magical kind, or like a kind of defensive option, because as Sevarog, you're gonna get a lot of bonus HP from your stacks as the games go on. So you can go get away with World Breaker, so you can kind of, this is like the sole item you can have in your build. That's all the damage you need, and the rest can be pure tank. So let's say we go World Breaker third. Your last two items are again just magical or physical armor items. So let's say we want to build Tainted God now against like the Rampage or like the ADC. So we'll build like Tainted God. And last item can be another magical or physical defense item, or it can be Wayman. Wayman is a very flexible all-in-one item to kind of cap out this build. Next up is gonna be Shinbi, and so Shinbi actually has some interesting build paths. You can either go like the Bruiser Shinbi build, which for those who don't know is essentially you go World Breaker. Let me kind of show you. I'll just do this really quick. You do like World Breaker, Tainted Guard, and Tainted Bastion. So that's a lot of plain damage you get from this build path. You get plain damage from this build path, but also you're actually very deceptively tanky because you're building all these like defensive items, but you're getting a ton of damage from World Breaker, right? But this is an item build I'm not sure it's always gonna be good enough, because right now it's just abusing how strong tank items are and whatnot. So I'm imagining this kind of build path may kind of fall off as these kind of items get nerfed and whatnot. But for now, if tank items are pretty strong, then this is a kind of alternative build going Shinbi. Most of the time though on Shinbi, the build pass that you're gonna be going on her, it's gonna go kind of the standard kind of magical power build. So you're gonna be going like a Soul Barrel on her. You can go Soul Barrel or Tempest. It really depends on your kind of like preference. If you like to be a lot more in the face and like Tempest, and if you like to kind of have more like magic, if you're being more like an actual kind of mage, Shinbi, then you do Soul Barrel. I personally like to do Soul Barrel because I really value the just mana sustain what you get from Magician Quest versus like a what you get from HP from like the Arcane Quest. So your first item on Shinbi is almost always gonna be Mega Cosm, just an item that really synergizes you really well for a kid, just really kind of spike your damage and whatnot. So like much like Countess, once you can get this item built out as fast as possible, that's when you can start to be a big threat. And that's why I like going Soul Barrel, because if you want to go like a Tempest angle, then you have to do like an Alchemy Ward. You have to go like an Alchemy Ward early on, which will delay your power spike for Mega Cosm. So that's why I prefer going Soul Barrel, because there's all the mana sustain I need, so I can focus on building Mega Cosm first. After Mega Cosm, then you go into World Breaker. World Breaker is actually a very solid item. That's why like going World Breaker first and a Shimmy Booster build actually works really well. But in this kind of like more standard Shimmy build, these is kind of like your core items pretty much from game to game, essentially. So your last 3 items are going to be dependent on how the game state is going. If you feel like you keep running out of mana pretty quickly because you're getting really aggressive and you're using your abilities a lot, then you can do like a Kosaka third. If not, then you can do like a Life Binder, so you can get better sustain in the all-ins and beef your kind of magical assassin. Fourth item can be like a Dream Binder, very great. Again, this is HP that's building into Life Binder and World Breaker, so very efficient kind of build path you can go right here. And lastly, last item is just gonna be a counter item, so against like a lot of healing enemies, you go Taint Scepter. If not, you can kind of like go like a Oblivion Crown angle, so you can go Oblivion Crown to cap out your build. You can go Golden Scale against physical heals on the enemy team. Or you can even do like Waste Leggings, so now you slow people, but now you have movement speed on yourself whenever you hit targets. Last but not least, we're going to be going over Steel, and his build path is going to be very similar like the Riktor and Sevarog, with one big difference, and that is you're going to be building into Brimstone first, because Steel is someone that, unlike the Riktor and Sevarog, his base wave clear tools are very bad. So you want to go Brimstone just so you can match and have decent wave pushing power, because if you don't get this early, then someone like a Shinbi or any offlane in general will always be able to push the wave out way faster than you can do, even if you use your abilities. So you want to go Brimstone always first at the first T2 item. And so like for your item, it's going to be a Titan Square, so again it can be like a Razorback or Needed Roper. Most of the time it's going to be Razorback right here. So after you get Brimstone, then just second item, like the first 4 item you're gonna build, it's gonna be the counter item. So this is gonna be very similar to what you do with Sevarog Riktor against a Grux or a Crunch. Then you build like Tainted Guard against like a Shinbi, a Countess, or any other magical tanks. Then you do like a Tainted Bastion. So again, you just build tank items to counter them. Once you build your first full like tank item to counter your offlaner, that's when you can now go back and finish off with Fire Blossom. Your third item is going to be another tank item, so it can be another magical armor item. Let's say we just do Forehelm or a physical item. So Steel is someone that doesn't take as good advantage of like World Breaker as like a Sevarog or Riktor does. So I like to usually build Steel as a kind of pure tank. So your first item, fifth item, it's just really gonna be just tank items to build depending on who you're facing, right? So if you're facing magical offlane a lot, now you want to be building physical armor items. So something like a Dynamo is always been a great item on Steel. So let's say we go Dynamo next, and then your last item, let's say can be like Wayman Renew as a kind of universal item. You can even triple up on magical armor. You can go Stone Wall. But most importantly, you call item almost all the time. It has to be Fire Blossom. Like build Brimstone first, build your tank item, then build out Fire Blossom right here. But anyways, that covers all the offlanes in the game. I do realize that people sometimes like to play Murdoch or like a Howitzer offlane, but I don't consider them to be offlaners. I consider them to be kind of cheese picks kind of thing, because their main attendant roles are the mid lane and carry, not offlane. So the heroes I cover are the actual offlaners in this game. So that's just kind of why I just focus on not like all the other like picks you may see in the offlane. But yeah, that's about it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments that if you guys really enjoyed this kind of video and if this really helps you out. Again, shout out to Crashy and Soul Reaper for like putting out their build order guide videos on like the mid lane and jungle, because I think this is a very cool trend to have content creators put out these kind of build order guides to you guys. So now hoping we can see other content creators pick up on the ADC and support guide, because I think it'd be really cool if all the different content creators come together and we all cover one of the 5 roles in this game to really help the community out. But anyways, really hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Subscribe if you are new, it really helps out a lot. Like this video and all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.